Welcome to the Resilient Minds podcast, stories of grit, growth, and success, where we dive deep into the journey of successful leaders who've struggled and succeeded. Before the wins, before the titles, what was the mindset behind the leader? On this show, we focus on real stories behind the success, the struggles, the resilience, and the courage it takes to keep moving forward, even when times get tough. My goal is to provide you with stories of hope and transformation, showing that no matter the challenges, there is a way forward. On this show, we'll be meeting with highly successful leaders who've battled through obstacles, emerging stronger and wiser on the other side. This show is for anyone who wants to grow, evolve, and find the light at the end of the tunnel. Everyone's a leader, so together, we'll uncover what it truly means to evolve as leaders, and ultimately, as human beings. This is Resilient Minds. Hey, I'm your host, Dr. Campbell, and I'm here with Alan Utley. He is a speaker in the HR community, and he is a culture strategist. He's here to tell us about his heart in the HR world, shifting the workplace. Alan, thanks for joining us.
Of course. Thanks for having me. It's so good to see you. Always enjoyed our conversations, and so I'm glad to keep it going.
Yeah, likewise. I was just taking my face off the visual, so I'm not distracted. The last time we had our very first conversation, it flowed very nicely, and I really wanted to have you on the podcast because I think a lot of people will value the things that you have to say. And our first conversation alone, it could have been recorded and put on the podcast. So I was like, no, it was such a good one. So explain to us what you do in the workplace. Why is it so important?
Yeah, sure. So let me start by saying I've been in the workplace for officially 25 years post-college, but I also started when I was 16 years old, as a lot of people did. So I've been in the workforce a long time. And the area that I've been focusing in the most is the majority of my career has been in human resources. And what I have found working in HR is that the success of the culture drives, or the health of your culture actually drives the success of your business. And what I want to do is where I'm at in the organizations that I work for and work with, I just want to help design a healthy culture. And I know that seems really, really simple, but it comes from a place of really, my mission is to detoxify the workplace.
Right.
And in order to do that, we have to define what that looks like and define what a healthy workplace looks like, and then be intentional about it. I've always said that toxic workplaces exist, but not on purpose.
Right.
People don't set out to create those, right? They set out to create a business, and then they want to be successful. And so they drive and they drive and they drive. And the traits that make them successful, at some point, there's this tipping point where you reach a point where you are successful, but you're no longer successful because you're driving and you're pushing and you're expecting this level of excellence, but you're ending up with lost capacity because the way you're like, you forgot that you actually are creating a culture full of human beings.
Right.
And when you forget that, then you lose the potential that is inside that the humanity potential. So that's my whole mission, is to help leaders understand that, recognize that, and be more intentional about designing cultures that are healthy and that help them thrive. You can have both people and profit thrive at the same time. I know it can happen because I've seen it.
Right. It just takes the intentional effort, like you're saying. But you said that it sounds simple. I think to the average person, what you're doing, like creating a healthy culture, right? Like in air quotes, whatever healthy is, but
Yeah.
you're making it more specific. We're detoxifying it to make it healthy. But that's not actually a simple thing. Even though people think, oh, well, that's a super simple thing. That's easy. We should all have that. We should all want that. But in reality, humans are extremely complex. And when you take our unresolved wounds and our traumas and our attachment issues, right? Then we add our projections because we think our reality is real, when really we're looking through unresolved wounds, and then we bring that into the workplace. And then a lot of times we're just combating our own wounds when we're combating each other in that place. So we have an obligation to really work on ourselves. How do you talk to people in these toxic workplaces to convince them that they actually have to work on themselves.
Well, first thing I want to say is I want to make sure that I recognize that I have my own wounds.
Absolutely, we all do.
I'm
Yep.
bruised, just like everybody else. I'm not perfect, but I'm out here trying to make create this movement because I'm in it, and I see it, and I feel it, and I see the impact. And so, to answer your question, how do you get somebody to see that they need to be better or to be different? That's essentially the question, right? It's all in the results. It's in the impact. And so let me use a very common example. So part of my job as human resources person is to investigate, right? Complaints come to me, and they're complaints about harassment or bullying or favoritism or discrimination, all the buzzwords. And it's often never as bad as they make it sound on paper. You never, I shouldn't say never, but you often don't actually find any violations of policy. But when you peel back and you ask people what's really going on, describe for me what you're experiencing, describe for me what you're feeling, describe for me the impact it's having on you, that's when we see the opportunity. I remember an investigation just recently, and it was an investigation. It was a complaint of bullying a boss, right? Or sorry, a boss bullying an employee. And I said, give me specific examples. And they couldn't. They couldn't be very specific. That I said, so tell me, what are they doing? Like, how are they making you feel? And what do you want out of this investigation?
Right.
And his answer will stay with me forever. And it was, I don't want to be threatened. I want to be coached.
Hmm.
And so taking that message back to that leader is where you start, and you create that recognition that there needs to be something different. And I know that that leader is not trying to threaten that person. I think I lead with positive intent, right? I'm going to assume that most people want to wake up every day and do a good job and be a good person.
Right.
There is a pocket of people out there that are different than that. That
Right.
that's not my scope, okay? I can't solve, maybe you can, but I can't solve for sociopaths, okay? But what I can solve for are the people who want to be better, who don't realize the impact that they're having, the strategies they're using, the habits that they have formed, the behaviors that they it, use every day
Right.
are being seen and felt in a way that's not intended. So that's a
Right.
very long way to answer your question. You start by putting up a mirror and saying, here's the impact you're having. Now, where do we go from here?
Right. So those words that you said, no wonder they stood with you forever, because what you said was the individual told you, I don't want to be threatened, I want to be coached. So they were looking for help, right? But due to whatever circumstances, right, the leader inadvertently, and this is just from my own perspective, projected something unknowingly and unintentionally and had no idea.
Right.
Right? So they came off, the way that they were received was that they were threatening. So
Yeah.
whenever you do present this to them, obviously you have to be able to see it from both sides, right? And what you said that really resonated with me in our very first conversation, you were talking about advocating for grace in
Mm.
the workplace. Like if we just put our grace glasses on, see it from that perspective, the majority, not everybody, but the majority, they really do want a positive outcome. So if this individual, the employee, is wanting coaching, they're wanting to grow and they're wanting help,
Yeah.
then this leader is probably wanting to teach, to get some kind of improvement somewhere, right? But their inabilities, their lack, not knowing how to do this, and then maybe not even knowing how they're coming off, because self-reflection is actually the internal mirror going on, and they can catch themselves and I'm saying, well, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to say it like that, what I meant was, or my intention
Mm-hmm.
was XYZ, right? But
Yeah.
then it takes people like you, when that internal mirror is not turning around and they cannot see themselves in real time or even after the event, they need somebody who does care about them, who
Mm-hmm.
can give them grace and say, hey, this is the way that you came off. What's actually going on with you?
Mm-hmm.
And then
Yeah.
listen.
Yeah. Yeah. And I love that question. Here's what's happening, what's going on. And that right there is grace. It's a moment of creating space for, this isn't working, let's figure it out. what we often choose in that moment is this isn't working, fix it.
Right.
And it's yeah, and it's the sort of just it's what bosses do, right? They have the authority, they have the title, they direct, they tell, they say go fix it. It rather than uh, being authentic and being vulnerable and saying this isn't working. I don't actually know how to fix this. Let's figure this out.
Absolutely. I love that one because that I think
Yeah,
is mostly what's going on.
yeah, and and that's and I had a similar situation recently where there was a team that wasn't working together, and like none of the pairs were working, and the boss's default was I'm going to write them up. I'm going to tell them that they're not working, and I'm going to tell them to fix themselves. And I took one look at that, and I said, okay, tell me about the conversation you've already had with this employee. Well, I haven't talked to him, but I see the problem, and I'm going to fix it with this document. That doesn't work. I work in human resources, but I want to throw corrective actions out. I want to get rid of them. I know that's not going to be popular with my community, but we default to them. We think they are the strategy that works, and it's not. It's a survival strategy.
Right.
It's compliance driven. It's pushing, and going back to that, it has to be a conversation. It's like what's like the grace moment is we don't know how to fix this. We don't know what's wrong. Let's figure it out together and let's solve it together. And that requires vulnerability. It requires the ability to say, I don't know. And so many leaders in a high performance, high production, high expectation environment are not willing to do that.
Mm. Or not capable because they don't
Mm.
even know that they need those skills. Because those skills, what I was
Yeah.
hearing when you were talking about that was that the compliance, and I was in the mental health field and now I'm in leadership development. Like I'm all about people dynamics, science, things like that. I have no idea the terminology for HR, right? But you said, something with compliance, it's standard oriented. What was it called?
A corrective action document. Yeah.
Corrective action. Perfect.
Yeah.
To me, I hear control based.
Hmm.
Right. Well, your strategies, even though they're not according to the norm, it's people oriented. Let's have a
Right.
conversation and be collaborative, which actually it activates. Being in that space means you have to slow down and you have to pay attention. You really have to connect, and
Yeah.
all that's right hemisphere activation.
Right.
So people who are very control based, they are more emotionless and
Mm.
just moving forward. And they do move fast, don't get me wrong. But then you're completely
Mm.
blind to the human aspect of what's
Mhm.
actually going on. So you can't solve the human problems.
Yeah. We have to shift from controlling to collaborating.
Right. I
And
love
that feels, yeah. And if I think, yeah, well, you said it. I just borrowed it. And it's that takes patience, which people are not willing to give.
that. Right.
People don't have the patience to go to that place. And grace is, I'm glad that you brought grace into the conversation because it's something I've been thinking about for this entire year, right? It's been sort of this journey that I've been on. And I'm glad we're having this conversation in November because we're coming to the end of this year and I'm doing that self-reflection on where have I had an impact and have I had the impact that I intended to have coming into this year? And I've been on this journey to get us to talk about grace. And I have a framework that I've created to do just that. And I call it fanatical grace.
Mm.
And there's a difference, right? Grace says, I'm going to be nice and I'm going to say it's okay. And I'm going to let you off the hook. And that's great. We need more of that. But that's where it stops. And when we just lean on being nice, we don't actually produce results. And we need to produce results. So we need to be able to hold people accountable. So fanatical grace to me is about being nice, letting humanity in the door and saying it's okay. We're all human.
Yeah.
It's okay that this didn't go the way we wanted it to. I'm allowing space for imperfection. And now let's grow from here.
Right.
It didn't go the way it wanted it. Why didn't it? Now let's fix it. What do you need? How can I help you? And let's continue to grow. And so my whole framework models addresses those survival strategies that we've been talking about, and they replace them with thriving strategies, moving from surviving to thriving or serving, really.
Right. I love that because you're even though and you may be in a situation where somebody gets defensive because then we naturally attack back, right? Like what you're doing is you're
Yes.
staying open. Because when we
Yeah.
stay vulnerable and open, which grace exists in that place when we're open. When we're closed, we're defensive because
Yeah.
we're literally closed-minded. It can't, what you're saying doesn't compute because it's not entering my brain. So I have to stay open, even if you verbally attack me, to just continue to give you grace
Mm.
so I can stay collaborative. That is a huge,
Wow.
it's a whole other layer or level of accountability to be able to
Yeah.
do that.
Yeah. And I mean, yeah. And I'm so glad you put it in that way because in my perfect world, in my head, everyone is bringing grace to a conversation.
Right? Me
But
too.
that's not reality, is it?
No.
You said you're going to verbally attack me. And that's true. And that has happened. And it's happened to me. And it's happened to other people. And so I have to still make that choice, which is hard because our ego gets in the way and our pride
Yep.
gets in the way. And how dare you gets in the way. And we have to create, and I'm a victim. Again, I'm not perfect. I'm a victim of that, even recently.
Right.
There are people I have to forgive as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I was going to ask you too, because I have plenty of my stories, right? Because it is so hard to give grace regardless, so that we don't get caught up in our ego, right? Even if the other person doesn't, and that's perfectly fine if they don't, you just need to be able to do it for you. When has been a time, whether it be recently or in the past, that's been significant for you that you really needed to just hone in on the grace? Keep your ego in check, or maybe even comfort yourself to be able to come off the way that you wanted, regardless of how the other person was responding.
Well, I'd love to go back to a story that is very early in my career, if you want to go back that far,
Absolutely.
because there are so many things that shaped how I show up today. And when I first started out, graduating from college, I had had a pretty successful high school and college career. At least I thought I had. I was president of the choir. I'm that cool, right?
I have a kid in the choir. No, 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 you're totally cool right here. You're
Big
cool
man
in
on
the
campus,
space.
right? There's the quarterback and then there's the choir president, right? So I was pretty cool. And then I was president of my college fraternity, but it was a business fraternity. So you're getting a picture for me here. But anyway, I graduated from college and I'd had a pretty decent time, high school, college, and getting out into the workforce. Oh man, I had no idea. I had no idea how I was going to come across and how it was going to really set me back. My first couple of jobs, I had a hard time connecting with my coworkers and even my leaders. And I remember them just kind of isolating me and pushing me off to the side. And I started to realize it's not them, it's me. And it took me a while to get to that place. And there were a couple of moments where a boss would take me into the office and give me that hard truth, give me that moment of grace, that I didn't want to accept at the moment. And I remember one of my bosses pulling me into this conference room, and she said, "Alan, it takes a lifetime to build credibility, and you have already lost it."
Oh, wow.
And it was because I was showing up to these meetings pretending like I knew stuff I didn't. I had graduated from college with an HR degree, and I was now working in HR, but I didn't know anything.
Right.
And I was in these meetings, and people were asking questions and making comments, and I would do this, yeah, I know that, or I understand that, or I'd project things that I could do that I could not prove that I could do. I was cashing checks, confidence checks, or writing checks rather, I couldn't cash. And so finally sitting me down and giving me that little piece of feedback, looking back on that, that was a turning point moment for me. But it didn't end there. I continued to be a little bit unsuccessful for the next couple of years until I finally went to my next job. And this is where the real transformation happened. Going into my next job, I did that internal self-reflection, that internal mirror. And I said, the mistakes that you've made for the last 4 years cannot continue to repeat.
Right.
And so going to this next job, what can you do with intention to show that you are a team player, to show that you're here to learn, to
Mhm.
show that you want to be successful and that you don't know anything? And that was what I went in with. this clean slate, this blank slate, op- and I demonstrated that I'm here to learn, and I'm here to be a team player. I'm here to help. And I learned the power of asking questions, the power of taking notes, the power of asking for help. And that then set me on the right path from there.
So you had said something earlier that really stuck out to me. You said it's not them, it's me. And
Yes.
so the biggest nugget, it seems like, from your story was humility.
Yeah.
Right. And I
Yeah.
feel, and I'm guilty of it too. Like we have our periods of life where like you get a little bit of it and then you get a whole lot of it. But like no matter what, we can still be guilty of forgetting. Our ego is constantly wanting to come in and control. And when I say ego, I don't mean the person that's confident that, it's all about me. I mean the part that makes you quiet and you need to speak up, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or the part that makes you controlling, right? Either way, it's not people centered where you're open and vulnerable and completely honest, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, that's my perspective of our true authentic self.
Mm-hmm.
It is balanced because we still have to have those hard conversations where people tell us, they give us the feedback, we receive it, right? But then we can also be honest with them. So it's
Yeah.
a mutual thing. We have to keep each other
Yeah.
accountable. And that takes a whole other level of humility too.
It does. And so I know you said you have lots of stories. So I'm going to turn this around and ask you, when has that shown up for you?
I actually did a YouTube video about that earlier this
Oh,
week.
perfect.
We're tracking, right? Apparently, this is what people are needing to hear.
Yeah.
When I was a newly promoted non-commissioned officer in the Marine Corps, I was given a platoon and I was very new to the unit, but I was only given the platoon because of my rank, not because of my capability.
Mm.
So I got there, I didn't know anybody. I started barking orders, I started changing things, and I was, a few weeks in, everybody hated me. And I was thinking, I'm doing a good job of getting everything in line. Everything's getting done, right? Like the moving forward, getting everything done, being task oriented, forgetting about the people.
Hmm.
That's exactly what I did. And my sergeant had to pull me aside. He's like, you have no idea how to listen. They don't even know you.
Wow.
So that was a huge turning point for me, listening, right? Which is a huge gift because it forces you to have humility to just listen. Your voice can sit to the side. It's all right. You can speak later. Your ideas are great, just not right now. But let them speak and really try to hear. Because even when people project, like you were talking about in your when the leader was being threatening and not coaching, like sometimes we don't realize that we're projecting our unresolved wounds and we really need to sit and listen because then we can hear them better, but then we can see ourselves better too when we
Wow.
slow down.
Yeah.
You know, there's actually a good book. Somebody recently recommended it to me, and I definitely read it. It's called The First 90 Days, and it
Mhm.
talks a lot about humility when you get promoted or you move into a new working environment. Just have humility, listen to everybody. Don't try to change anything. Just listen, ask questions, learn.
Yeah. I was also just talking about that book recently with
Look at
someone.
that.
Yeah. But it was in this frame of um what happens when a new leader joins a team.
Mm.
And very much what you were just talking about, a lot of new leaders will people are given the jobs because of they're just sometimes it's just time in the seat, like, oh, it's your turn to get promoted. Sometimes it is because of skill, but they still don't have the new skills that they need, right? They're an individual contributor who is successful, but now suddenly they're in charge of a team and they have absolutely no idea how to do that, which is, I think, most common. I don't know why we haven't solved for this already. Why this has been going on for years. But anyway, the point was this 90-day idea is an interesting one. But what happens on day 91?
Mm.
In those first 90 days, I've seen this new boss bump that happens. And it's a positive bump that we attribute to the new boss, which I don't know is I think it's a fallacy in a way, because there's a lot of conditions that exist when a new boss comes in. Sometimes just the removal of the old boss is what makes the new team successful because they're no longer blocking them. They're blocking potential, no longer stifling potential. And the new boss comes in and it represents something new and something exciting, and the people want to impress the new boss. And so suddenly everybody starts performing and performance goes up, and the new boss says, I'm killing it.
Yeah.
And then things start to slow down. The equity that was built from all that change um, starts to being less effective, and then suddenly new boss starts to fail. So first 90 days is great, but we have to plan for day 91 and beyond as
Absolutely.
well.
Absolutely. And I think you have a good point, not only humility, but constantly keep, and this is your own discernment, your own accountability, right? But being vigilant in, okay, I'm moving really fast to attack the goal to meet our quota, right? Which is task oriented. And now I need to slow down to pay attention to people,
Mm-hmm.
right? And
Yep.
pay attention to myself, because if I'm not paying attention to me, I'm going to inadvertently ignore them. That's how our
Yeah.
internal mirror works. That's why we have projections. Whatever I do to myself, I inadvertently do to other people. A lot of this is on a subconscious level. So if people aren't working on themselves, they don't see it. But if you really work on noticing the difference between gas pedal, brake pedal, and then really doing the self-reflective when you're on the brakes, like you can't project, your nervous system will start to keep you accountable as you start to threaten or control or whatever that negative dynamic that you are caught in, because we can all have it. But our internal mirror needs us to slow down, to pay attention to it.
This is so, what you just said is really ringing in my ears. So if I'm not paying attention to myself, then I'll start ignoring everybody else as well. Or I can't pay attention. If I'm not paying attention to myself, I can't pay attention to other people.
Right. Because it's a projection, you have to be attentive to
Yeah.
working on yourself. So
Interesting.
this is digging into your wounds, finding your insecurities, working on your areas of limitation, feeling your emotions, actually taking care of yourself. When you do all that stuff for you, you
Yeah.
naturally start being more attentive to other people and supporting them and taking
Interesting.
care of themselves.
Interesting. But isn't that selfish?
Mhm. You know, you'd think so, because
Hmm.
I actually wrote a book recently called Life's Contradictions. When we pay attention to ourselves, right, and we're all about us, it's
Yeah.
still in the ego. Just because you pay all kinds of attention to yourself doesn't mean you're working on yourself. When
Mm.
you work on yourself, you dig into those
Yeah.
areas that are painful, you pull them out, you analyze them, you work on them. Then what happens is when it's more organized, then
Mm.
there's not so much pain, right? But then when somebody else comes in and they're still struggling, they're still trying to figure it out, then you can give them grace because you see it clearly,
Wow.
right? So like if I have control issues, but you've already worked on your control issues, you can sit there and listen to me and see, even if I project onto you, you know, you don't have to get defensive because you understand how hard it is.
Wow. And that creates a calm and a self-confidence
Yeah,
in a way, right?
absolutely.
Yeah.
Stability.
It makes me think about a workshop that I led recently. And there's something about this topic of grace that really opens things up for people and creates this almost transformative experience, because I'm trying to create a space that allows for that safe conversation to say what we're doing isn't working and it's okay. Now let's make a choice to work better. And there was this workshop I did recently with leaders from a lot of different businesses had come together, and we were doing this self-reflective exercise on some of these survival strategies that people have used in the past. The question was actually, think about leaders you've had who've used these strategies and the impact it's had on you. And
Hmm.
then when I asked for some open discussion to share, one gentleman in the middle of the room stood up and he said, "It's me." He said, "I'm that asshole that you're talking about."
Hmm.
And we all just kind of waited to see where he was going to go from there. It was just this silence. He then talked for maybe 5 minutes about the impact that leaders that he had had on him, and the role models that he thought were good ones that he realized weren't. And he was just learning bad behaviors, and then the impact that he was having. And he said there was this moment when he had thought about the legacy that he was creating because he had some people on his team have some very bad personal results because of his leadership. And so he made some choices in that moment to do some work on himself. But it was clear he was still doing that work, because when he stood up and shared what he shared, he got emotional. And he ended up, there was another person in the room who had been within his sphere of influence and had been affected. They had this moment of just hugging it out when it was over.
Oh,
Yeah. And yeah, that's how I felt too. It's like, where do I go from here? I feel like my workshop is done, but we had to keep going. But that's what grace does. It creates that space for that kind of internal reflection and healing, and allows for that intentional, like that moment. Just thinking about it now is getting me emotional. Just knowing that somebody was willing to do that and stand in front of people and admit that and say, I got to be better.
Absolutely. Well, that's the environment that you're creating.
Yeah.
And if you, right before, because we are running out of time, I wish we had more, but before we end, what do you think is the number one thing that the workplace needs right now?
Humanity.
Oh, yeah. Because when
Yeah.
humanity is there, healing naturally happens. Grace naturally happens.
Yeah, and I think the way to really encapsulate it is we don't let humanity in. We say leave it at the door. Don't bring in your emotions, don't bring in your personal problems, right? These are things that we're taught even as young as high school, in clubs, sports. Come in and don't let any of that stuff cloud your ability to perform. But I think that if you leave part of yourself outside, you can't be your whole self and you can't do your best work. So instead of leaving part of yourself outside, let your entire humanity in,
Right.
and embrace that and grow from there. So I think if we let more humans in and we allowed for humanity just to be what it is, that we could unlock some tremendous capacity and do more.
I completely agree. I love
Yeah.
that. Well, I really appreciate your time. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you so much for joining. Your time and your focus are your most valuable currencies, so thank you for giving that to us today. Our guest contact information will be in the description below, and don't forget to like and subscribe. But please, if you know someone who's struggling, stop right now and send this video to them. The struggle behind growth and success is real, and they need the support to make it, because the strongest minds are the ones that healed. So don't forget, lead louder, feel deeper, and stay resilient. Until next time, this is your host, Dr. Campbell, on the Resilient Minds Podcast.